Hello, my friend. It's Gina. Thank you for continuing the long journey in the effort to find justice for Elizabeth. This is an account that's based on a true story, one that, as of this recording, remains ongoing. Welcome back to Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman, Episode 7. Content warning. This and future episodes contain sensitive topics and may cause distress to some listeners. Hearing disturbing actions of oppression, manipulation, and abuse can bring up painful memories, personal struggles, and trauma for many. Narrator's note: the names have been changed and places are purposefully arbitrary to protect the privacy of those involved. This podcast is our way of telling Catherine and Elizabeth's story so that others can be aware of potential future issues. The central figures in our story include Catherine, her sister Elizabeth, Elizabeth's husband Walter, and Walter's granddaughter Darcy. Let's recap. Elizabeth has been moved into a new facility, one that offers activities that help stimulate fading brain functions, more opportunities for conversations, music, activities, and more. Although her private room is larger, Darcy has furnished it with questionable items that are dangerous to an individual of Elizabeth's age and mental acumen. Catherine and Elizabeth's brother Charles has been named guardian and therefore has to set up, sign up, update several things. Elizabeth's finances are in jeopardy because all of Elizabeth's assets were moved into Walter's accounts. Now that he's dead, Darcy has it all. The money Darcy had bestowed into the Guardian bank account, along with Elizabeth's Social Security monthly checks, will not sufficiently cover Elizabeth's care long term, by no means. The family discovers during their initial visit with the new facility administrators that Darcy had discontinued Elizabeth's memory care medication again. The new facility required all prescribed medications to be administered. Reminder, the GP who prescribed that medication is Darcy's hand-picked doctor. One might think a decline in Elizabeth's health could be advantageous to someone. Finally, an introspect into Walter's death. The very fact that Elizabeth managed to keep Walter alive for over 15 years, even with dementia. But 128 days after Elizabeth was removed from him, he's dead, leaving so many questions. And now we continue. Back when I was very young and naive, I thought the phrase, "it could happen to anyone," was both trite and an exaggeration. However, I've come to not only accept, but to embrace that saying. This reporting is at its core an attempt to help others. What's transpired over these 2 years seems surreal, infuriating, ridiculous, soul-crushing, mind-bending, gut-wrenching, and yes, almost ludicrous at times. And absolutely everything in this story could happen to anyone. In this episode, we are going to discuss just some of the places that justice has failed Elizabeth. Elizabeth was blessed with a loving family, a brilliant mind, and studious habits. Because of all of that, she was able to make her dream of becoming a doctor a reality. Can anyone rectify the injustice that she has endured for decades of spousal abuse? No. Can anyone rectify the injustice that the extraordinary brain Elizabeth once possessed is now deteriorating? Sadly, that's another no. The fact that all of Elizabeth's assets that she worked so hard to accumulate have been taken from her is another thing altogether. The fact that all of Elizabeth's assets she worked so hard to accumulate have been taken from her is another thing altogether. No matter who or what is named as Elizabeth's beneficiary in her latest will is completely beside the point. Elizabeth is alive right now. It doesn't matter if it was $500 or $5 million. It all belongs to Elizabeth. And even though today she is legally unable to make the choices of what to do with it, there should be safeguards in place to ensure that the use of her money should be earmarked and protected for Elizabeth's own care for the rest of her life, period. Since the day my friend confided what was happening to Elizabeth, I keep thinking about my own parents and grandparents. I hope they never worried that they might be abandoned or used just to fund another person. But today, it's alarming to think how often these things happen. Scams and con artists have been part of society since the beginning. No one is immune, but I venture to say that most of us would think that only a complete stranger would do anything to harm us. But in reality, too many instances, it could turn out to be someone who is known to us. Step back with me several months earlier to the hearing where Elizabeth's family asked the court to appoint a family member as guardian when the judge had appointed Catherine. I'll set the stage again. It's family court. In this state, most of the cases in this court are probate or guardianship. If you remember from an earlier episode, when the judge is seated, they make an announcement that these are very private matters. The only people in the courtroom should be those involved in that particular case. All others are asked to leave the courtroom and wait in the hallway until their case is called. The players are, of course, the judge, the plaintiffs, petitioners, and their attorneys, if they are represented by one, the guardian ad litem, and an assistant county attorney. In this instance, during the proceedings, as the judge is listening to Alex, the family attorney, explain the family's position, the judge is also flipping through the motion paperwork Alex had filed. The judge directed a question to the assistant county attorney. Will your office be investigating the wrongdoings here? The assistant county attorney answered, Yes, Your Honor. Both the judge and the assistant county attorney saw the issues immediately. What happened from that exchange? Funny you should ask. In less than 1 month, the same judge gave guardianship back to Darcy. Yes, there was a technicality. So one could imagine that the preferable response would have been to either schedule a full hearing on the matter or appoint the guardian ad litem or another temporary guardian until a full investigation could have taken place. Either way would have been much more prudent for Elizabeth, but none of those things happened. By the way, this particular judge stepped down very soon after that. And altogether, the family appeared in front of 3 different judges in family court in less than 6 months. First, let's talk about how this county attorney's office works. The county attorney's office is responsible for the prosecution of all violations of criminal law within the jurisdiction of the district court. According to their website, some of the services they provide include crime victims advocacy, domestic violence resources, guardianship, and elder abuse. The assistant county attorneys report their findings and their recommendations directly to the county attorney. It is ultimately up to the county attorney whether the assistant attorney can move forward with the case or not. And if they are given the go-ahead, the county attorney would most likely provide direction as how they move forward. In this case, the assistant county attorney, for brevity, let's use the name Sam. Sam put together the information that they learned from this particular family court hearing. In question is the care and welfare of a now widowed, retired doctor with cognitive decline over the course of many years. With the amount of money involved, which is a red flag all on its own, Sam's recommendation was to acquire more information for records, particularly bank records, by way of issuing subpoenas if necessary. Sam indicated that the timeline for several incidents is worrisome, as is the amount of money that's being spent by the originally appointed guardian, Darcy. The county attorney rejected the case outright, stating that there just isn't enough manpower or bandwidth to move forward with the prosecution. FYI, bandwidth is an expression when someone doesn't have the time or ability to deal with a situation, especially one that involves a lot of information or problems. Sam remained undaunted and reached out to the sheriff's office for assistance. A newly promoted detective was given the assignment. Sam and the detective met, went over all the case notes. Not surprisingly, the detective was immediately drawn into the story behind their very first case. No doubt exciting, but the story and the timeline are extraordinary. If by chance you are a law and order junkie like me, then no doubt you're aware that there are procedures to obtain a subpoena. The burden of proof relies on the petitioner's ability to show just cause and to make a clear and convincing showing that a privilege doesn't apply. In this case, the banking institution is claiming client privacy. Sam and the detective agree that they need subpoenas to get to the nuts and bolts of this case. Even when both of them present their findings to the county attorney, once again, they were rejected immediately. No subpoenas would be issued, period. So, my fellow armchair detective, what do you surmise with this information? Personally, I want to know precisely why no. Don't you? Both the original family court judge and Sam recognized obvious issues within minutes of looking over just a few documents, that there were problems that should be addressed. Yet this duly elected county attorney is refusing to issue subpoenas. Evidently, the real detective was curious too, and they can research anything they even suspect as a lead without the aid of any subpoenas. Where to start? We've all heard it before. Follow the money. And how about that? Another lo and behold moment. the detective is the one who discovered that Darcy had purchased the big house with cash. It's probably apparent that I just can't get over the amount of money spent just on that property alone, mostly due to the aspect that it was cash. Wowzer. I've always heard that very large sums of cash used to buy things were automatically red flagged these days. But so far, this one hasn't even raised an eyebrow? According to the Google machine, the IRS may scrutinize large cash transactions as it raises concerns about potential tax evasion or money laundering. No shit, Sherlock. Another piece of information from the intrepid detective was that the realtor who sold Darcy the house, the cash sale, just happens to be married to said county attorney. Have I mentioned it's a very small town? Well, let's get this straight. The county attorney's spouse sold a piece of property for over $750,000 in cash, which should amount to a very tidy realtor commission. That would sure warrant some dinner conversation, at the very least, if not an all-out celebration. It would for me. How about you? Oh, and one more tiny piece of intel. This county attorney spent the 5 years between completing law school and being elected county attorney as an in-house counsel. This young, inexperienced attorney is now leading a team of several attorneys and staff. Sure doesn't seem like much lawyering experience to me, but there it is, folks. And yeah, I hear you loud and clear. The spouse sells a house for over $750,000 in cash, yet the county attorney either doesn't recognize Darcy's name or address, or what? Ignores it? Doesn't recuse themselves from the case? And instead denies subpoena request from their very experienced assistant attorney and a detective. Wowee, folks. Damn. Well, and who knows? Perhaps I'm reading way too much into this, and the county attorney is just naive and too inexperienced to see the optics of the spouse's involvement in the matter, if it were to be revealed. Coincidences do happen, especially in a small town, right? With all this going on, Catherine has taken it upon herself to reach out to the county attorney's office to basically beg them to investigate on behalf of their sister, explaining a few points of the case, including that the bank has refused to cooperate with the family, even though Charles is the legal guardian now. The county attorney's office told Catherine that there's not enough manpower or bandwidth for their office to proceed. They suggest that Catherine should reach out to the district attorney, where Catherine is also told that there just isn't enough manpower or bandwidth to move forward with investigating or potential prosecution. Also, that she might reach out to the state attorney and maybe even the Secretary of State, which she does. Weirdly, all of those offices responded exactly the same. Not enough manpower and bandwidth to investigate or prosecute. The Secretary of State's office did add that it should be handled locally anyway, and that she might also reach out to the FBI. Maybe they could be in a better position to deal with it. All in all, I just think what they're really saying is that they only want to take a path of least resistance. This kind of case isn't low-hanging fruit by any stretch of the imagination. It will take a lot of effort and a lot of time. In my way of thinking, this could be a career-making case. So one has to ask, under what circumstances would any politically minded individual, especially these days, choose to ignore the potential publicity alone? She sighs loudly. By the way, Catherine does contact the FBI. The local office isn't staffed on a daily basis, evidently, so voicemail would have to do for now. But wait, there's more discoveries by the real detective, including several 911 call-outs to Walter's house, and that our detective themselves was one of the deputies in attendance a couple of the times, and happened to remember Walter's irrational and confused behavior vividly. Our young detective also found that Darcy filed court documents stating that Elizabeth had no family and that Elizabeth's only assets was just a little money in the bank that Darcy herself had given towards that account that's for Elizabeth's care, along with the monthly Social Security check. These documents were filed after Darcy had been in touch with Catherine, as well as when she had told the police that Elizabeth's family were just a bunch of meth heads. There are so many little things that keep piling up. The many falsehoods, large amounts of money being moved, withholding medications, the lack of concern for Elizabeth's overall health and care, 3 dislocated shoulders in the course of just a few months, the metal cot, Walter's death and probate filed the same day, withholding Elizabeth's whereabouts from her family, and the house, for Pete's sake. None of these things would sit well with the court, but it will mean going back to court. And that discussion has been taking place. Alex says that unless the justice system takes up the matter, the next step will have to be a civil lawsuit. The family, on behalf of Elizabeth, will have to sue Darcy themselves. The time, the money, the stress will be more than anyone wants to do. But to be able to keep Elizabeth in a facility like the one she's in now, well, all they can do is hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. It'd be funny if it wasn't so damn serious. But Darcy made a pretty decent show of visiting Elizabeth since the move to the new facility, at least for a little while. She makes a big point of checking in properly when she arrives for visits, because it's date and time stamped. Checking out seems to be a little too much of a hassle, so no one knows how long she stays, just that she checked in. Now, in episode 6, we talked about the full bags of chocolates and packs of supplement drinks that Darcy tended to leave when she visits, and how Elizabeth would many times eat and drink these treats quickly. There were also issues with clothes, toiletries, and furnishings that seemed to get replaced or discarded during Darcy's visits. But worse, Elizabeth would get agitated during and after Darcy's visits. Elizabeth was adamant that she was afraid of Darcy, begging Catherine and Charles and other family members to make Darcy stop visiting, and especially how she didn't want to have to go out with Darcy. She was terrified to go to Darcy's house. The swimming pool and the stairs in particular. No doubt there would be some that would say, so what? Elizabeth is never getting better. Let her have anything she wants, the hell with it. To them, I say this. Right now, after a lifetime of caring for everyone but herself and living in a nightmare of a marriage, Elizabeth is finally able to enjoy life. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But she is finally free of Walter's constant abuse. Elizabeth's family truly wants what's best for her, helping her stay healthy and her mind as active as possible for as long as possible is the goal. In order to do everything they can to protect Elizabeth and try to keep the court-ordered visitation intact, they ask that Darcy not enter Elizabeth's personal room during her visits because of the inappropriate items left that are harmful to Elizabeth. On the very next visit, Darcy makes a scene, demanding that she had full visitation with her grandmother. And of course, the family found themselves once again in family court, in front of a judge that is not happy to see them standing in front of him again. Here's a little what not to do in court. But please keep a note of these two things first. 1, people who have been through hell and back can break. And 2, most people have never been in the types of situations Elizabeth's family finds themselves. So when Charles is standing in front of the judge, and the judge is reprimanding him in particular for not complying with the court-ordered visitation, Charles does push back in an attempt to explain what is happening to his sister. Irregardless, judges do not appreciate, nor do they tolerate, any sort of negativity towards anyone involved. The best answer is always, "Yes, Judge," or "Yes, Your Honor." The family counted their lucky stars that day that the judge let Charles remain as guardian. So many times, it's just best to let sleeping dogs lie, at least for now. Join us soon for Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman, Episode 8, where we learn even more discoveries from our detective and others. Abuse in all forms is an equal opportunity instrument of control, regardless of age, gender, IQ, education, or socioeconomic status. Whatever your age, for your own sake and those who care about you, please establish a living will. Keep it somewhere your chosen caretakers can access it. And if you don't have your assets in order, make plans right now to do so. Talk to an attorney and/or an investment institution you trust and make it happen before it's too late. The terms elder abuse, elder neglect, and elder fraud are relatively new. In general, elder abuse is a term referring to any knowing, intentional, or neglectful act by a caregiver or any other person that causes harm or a serious risk of harm to a vulnerable elderly person. Legislators in all 50 states have passed some form of elder abuse prevention laws. A good place to start for more information is the website justice.gov/elderjustice. And if you suspect elder abuse, there is help. The National Elder Fraud Hotline is 1-833-FRAUD-11. That's 833-372-8682. 8311. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 800-799-7233. These links and phone numbers are also located on the Lost Sister webpage, lostsister.buzzsprout.com. I hope you continue following as Elizabeth's family continue the struggle to help her in Lost Sister, a Discarded Woman. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, and share with your friends and family. By gaining a wider audience, we hope to bring attention to not only Elizabeth and Catherine's story, but to shine an enormous light on all domestic abuse, elder abuse, domestic violence, and elder fraud. More must be done to protect the vulnerable in our society. Our hope is by sharing Elizabeth and Catherine's story, it might help others to avoid the same happening to them or someone they love. Thank you.